people who believe they've lived before. There's no proof to support those who say they've lived in another time or place. Equally, there's no proof to say they haven't. Former Royal Air Force pilot Ken Llewellyn is convinced he's been on Earth before. So convinced, in fact, that he's travelled the world to find out where he lived and died.
Like a lot of us, Ken Llewellyn thinks of his life as an intricate and mysterious jigsaw puzzle. Some of the pieces don't quite seem to fit. Others just don't seem to exist at all. But unlike many, Ken felt compelled to go in search of himself. An 18-year journey of discovery that took him around the world and beyond the grave. Even as a schoolboy in England, Ken Llewellyn was fascinated by flight, a fascination that became an obsession and led him to his chosen career in the Royal Air Force. Today, he's a journalist, the senior public relations officer with the Royal Australian Air Force, and old wartime aircraft bring back memories, painful memories that set Ken off on the quest of his life. He remembers that his career as a fighter pilot in England had seemed assured until the nightmares began. Dark, reoccurring dreams that he was trapped in an aircraft as it spiraled toward the ground.
Eventually, I failed an advanced instrument rating, and I left the Royal Air Force. I wasn't interested in becoming a navigator or taking a ground job. And it was with great disappointment that I can remember walking out to the doors of RAF Leeming, knowing that my Air Force career had finished.
Ken Llewellyn's undying love of the air brought him to Australia and his job as a journalist with the RAAF. The nightmares had disappeared, and Ken had no idea the part they'd play in the jigsaw of his life. Until one day, a friend suggested he go and see a medium.
What was I in my immediate past life?
I see you as a German.
That medium was Monica Hammers, and she astounded Ken as she recounted his past life. First, she told him he'd been a pilot in the Luftwaffe during World War II. There was a plane, a Dornier on a bombing mission in 1942, its final mission.
Something is wrong. It is night time. I see flames in the darkness of the sky. An engine is alight. The plane is going straight down. I feel sucked down to the ground, straight.
It was an eerie echo of Ken's reoccurring nightmare back in the days when he was training to be a pilot.
Should I go back to Germany to investigate that life?
You will go overseas and seek another medium who will give you more clues to the puzzle.
I thought, well, this is easy. They said it was in 1942, so I thought I'll go back to England and I'll go and chase this story.
Remember, Ken was a journalist, and he thought he was on the trail of a great story, his own story. And as predicted by Monica Hammers, in England he did meet another medium.
Out of the blue, she said, you were decapitated in your immediate past life and you should remember that.
Another clue, one that led Ken Llewellyn to his uncle Gerwin for help. He'd been a pilot during the war and sat transfixed as Ken recounted the second medium's message.
When I told Gerwin that, he went as white as a sheet, and I thought, well, maybe he really can't hack that sort of material.
But that wasn't the reason. Uncle Gerwin was about to play a supporting role in what Ken believed was his past life.
He said he was on guard duty up in Norfolk, and he was first on the crash site of a Dornier, and he picked up the headless body of the German pilot.
Through official channels, Ken was able to confirm that a Dornier had in fact crashed in Norfolk. The date, July the 30th, 1942. By now, Ken was back home in Australia, and again he consulted the medium, Monica Hammers.
Monica said, you will go back to the crash site and you'll meet a schoolboy who's got pictures of the crash site.
Gradually, the pieces were slotting into place, but Ken's journalistic mind couldn't be satisfied with only half a story. He needed more information. So he returned to the UK and came to the Norfolk coast, where he met his next contact in the seaside town of Cromer. That contact was Derek Self, a World War II historian and an expert on wartime crash sites. He too was to have a part in what Ken Llewellyn believed was his past life.
He turned around and said to me, that crash had special significance to me because he said, I remember that crash as a schoolboy. And then he turned around and he said, I've got some pictures of the crash site if you want to see them.
The schoolboy, Derek Self, another piece in the puzzle. A piece that would seem to confirm many of the others already in place.
The plane was one of the latest of the German fleet. The Model E Dornier, which was really their latest and had their most modern equipment on it.
This is the actual site in Norfolk where the Dornier crashed in July 1942, where Ken Llewellyn believes he lost his life, his previous life.
There was 4 crew, 1 bailout and 3 were killed here in the crash. 1 was decapitated, that we heard, but I think it was true. But that's all we really know about it. Things were still sort of very secret then during the war.
First the nightmare of the hurtling plane, then the past life as a German pilot decapitated in a wartime crash, and finally the schoolboy. For Ken Llewellyn, it all came together when he met Derek Self. But there were still gaps in the puzzle. For instance, who was that German pilot? Again, Ken Llewellyn began writing letters, this time to the Germans, and almost 18 years after his search began, he tracked down the one crew member who survived the Dornier crash in 1942, the navigator Hermut Skrizak. Hermut was able to pass on the vital link, the name of the pilot, Oberleutnant Frederick Dorfinger. And not only that.
He said when the aircraft was doomed, it was just shot up. All the controls were shot up. Dorflinger, Friedrich Dorflinger, who supposedly I was, told everyone to get out of the aeroplane. Dorflinger couldn't get out himself because his parachute was damaged. And he said, I'm going to try and crash land the aircraft on the beach.
It seemed the puzzle of Ken Llewellyn's present and previous lives was solved. The questions had been answered. The person he was, the doomed German pilot, and the person he became, from the fascinated child to the failed flyer, and finally the journalist who couldn't let go of his story.
And this voice came through and said, that's why you had the problem in this current life. There you were in this bloody doomed aircraft and you couldn't get out.
Most other people would have made that the final chapter, but not Ken Llewellyn. Now, he says, he's determined to find Frederick Dorfinger's wife and children. His wife and children. The final missing piece in the jigsaw of his lives.